I feel like I could start every talk with, I'm so excited about this session. But we've been talking about action, and we've been talking about leadership and making change happen, and this is what it looks like. So everyone on this stage has affected meaningful change in really exciting ways. So anyway, I am so impressed by the crew that we've got on stage now, and I'm going to hand this over to Monica Stevenson, who's going to take us through this panel.
Thank you. Hello, hello. All right. So welcome, everyone, and I'm so excited to be in a room that is talking about some incredible topics, but we've also been pretty focused on the challenges, so how about we focus on some solutions? Mind to market is kind of a buzzword right now. I think a lot of people don't necessarily even know what that means. Also, it can get handled a little freely. I don't know if you guys discussed this in the glossary project, but it should probably be part of the glossary project. What does it really mean to be mind to market? The opacity that exists in our supply chain means that there can be a lack of information at best from the miner to the finished product, and at worst there's actually distrust, and I've seen that happen kind of firsthand. So it struck me yesterday, I think it was the journalist Paul Tullis, who said that it's difficult to buy a gem. I don't know if he said it's impossible, but it was difficult to buy a gem from Madagascar that is responsible because it's likely contributing to environmental destruction, working conditions are terrible, and the miner gets a fraction of what the gem is worth. So, but my reaction is like, if we knee-jerk react and say we can't buy gems from Madagascar, are we abandoning people as an industry? Also, how do we help them mine more responsibly? I think artisanal mining is important. It's 80 to 90% of our gemstone supply. It's not going away. It doesn't have to be illegal. It can actually be handled responsibly. For instance, I know there are efforts to formalize and educate the Madagascar sector, in particular by Charles Lawson. And there's the Akara brand of sapphires, which is represented through Fair Trade Jewelry Company, FTJ Co., who spoke yesterday. And those are actually certified from Mine to Market. They're an LSM project, so there's certain working conditions that are met, and it's documented all the way through. So there are solutions, even in Madagascar, which sounds pretty daunting. But how do we on the demand side know where to go and what to buy? So I can't pretend to know all of the resources and solutions and everything. Ethical Metalsmiths has launched a supplier self-assessment that is very in-depth and started with gemstones, which is a pretty complicated place to start. Hopefully more resources will be added to that. And in the meantime, we can share our knowledge through venues like this. So we have some luminaries on stage here who have managed to navigate the very long and very convoluted supply chain. And I just have to say I'm very grateful to the Chicago Conference for bringing these voices to the table consistently. Every year we have heard from people from very far-flung sectors. I think that is something to celebrate too. So we are going to start with Alexander. Alexander Riascos, I hope I got that right, is from Colombia. He is an industrial designer, and he has focused his design experience in the field of artisanal jewelry. And he works together with an artisanal collaborative, I think, in La Llanada. Did I get that right? Okay. So since 2013, he's been working with Kudmia. It's a mining cooperative. It's the main mining cooperative in your area in Colombia. Are there 10 mines, I think? Maybe there's more.
More than 80.
More than 80 mines? Wow, okay. So thanks to ARM, he has really made strides in this sector. And we're going to hear directly from Alexander. Since we have our artisanal miners here, we get to hear their voices. So the clicker doesn't We have Jay Mancata of Perpetuum Jewelers, Perpetuum Jewels doing the translation. Do you want to hold it or do you want to?
Aló. Hola, sí. Eh, Muy buenas tardes, un saludo especial de parte de desde Colombia. Mi nombre es Alexander Díaz, de cooperativa de La Llanada. Un saludo especial y un agradecimiento a Susan Weller por esa invitación y por todo el esfuerzo que ha hecho su equipo de trabajo para la realización de este evento.
He's introduced himself, Alexander Riascos. Side note, I'm also Colombian, so I'm proud to be participating in what he's going to communicate today. He represents the cooperative called Coodmilla. They are in an area called La Llanada in Nariño, right in the Andes Mountains of Colombia. His name is Alexander Riascos, and he wanted to extend big thanks to Susan Wheeler for having his voice and his representation in this very important venue.
Bueno, voy a hacer una introducción de Codmilla para ponernos en contexto y pues contarles quién es Codmilla, cómo se creó, cómo fueron sus inicios hasta el día de hoy.
He wants to share with you what is Codmilla, who is part of it, and what is in the progress up to today.
Hace más de 40 años un grupo de personas de esta región se decidieron organizar como en trabajo en equipo, organizar una cooperativa mediante la cual solicitaron los permisos legales ante el gobierno para tener acceso al trabajo dentro de esta región, pues digamos de manera legal.
So the association, it's started with 40 members, and the purpose was to cooperate with each other in their mining efforts.
En adelante, la organización ha ido trabajando, se ha adaptado pues a los retos, a los desafíos. Internamente ellos tienen unas normas, unos estatutos internos sobre los cuales se rigen y hacen respetar los deberes y los derechos de cada asociado. Entre estos, digamos, derechos que tiene cada miembro, tiene la oportunidad de trabajar en sus frentes de trabajo. Esto, pues, digamos, es una minería subterránea, entonces cada uno tiene la oportunidad de tener una extensión de terreno de mina por igual, medido en un metraje. Entonces, digamos, es una manera de garantizar el trabajo por igual a todos sus miembros.
He's explaining how participatory the work is. Every miner has a place to work, and it's secured and it's distributed based on territory. He was mentioning meters, and it's a way of balancing, the labor force and the opportunity for the workers on those sites.
Una pequeña explicación sobre la estructura. Está conformada por la asamblea, que la conforma la totalidad de los mineros. Ellos delegan un consejo directivo. El consejo directivo nombra unos funcionarios, un equipo de trabajo. El equipo de trabajo está liderado por el gerente. Tenemos también el secretario, un contador, revisor fiscal, una persona encargada de la administración del riesgo, el sistema en Colombia, denominado SARLAF, y la persona encargada de la operación de planta de beneficio y de las exportaciones.
It's okay. I'm counting the.
Necesita que repita, no hay problema.
Está muy bien.
Vamos uno por uno.
They are organized, is his intention, and the meaning behind it. There is a committee that assigns the roles. Amongst them, there's managerial roles. There are those are in charge of specific areas, which are.
Gerente,
So you have the principal manager,
secretario,
secretary,
contador,
accountant,
revisor fiscal,
fiscal advisor,
funcionario encargado de SARLAF, que es el sistema de administración del riesgo, evitar el lavado de activos y la financiación del terrorismo.
Very important role, someone that's assigned to risk management, specifically on the financing.
Operario de planta de beneficio y encargado de la comercialización y exportaciones, que en ese caso soy yo.
And then it's Alexander's role, which is administration of the plant and in charge of the exportation of the product.
Bueno, quiero comentarles cuál ha sido la importancia de Colmilla en la comunidad. Colmilla se ha caracterizado pues, por impulsar el desarrollo económico en la región, ya que la minería es la principal fuente de sustento económico de toda esta comunidad.
He wants to talk about the impact of Colmilla in the community. It is currently the main source of income for everyone involved.
También hay un impacto cultural, ya que esta comunidad siempre se ha dedicado a la actividad de la minería y ellos se sienten orgullosos de que exista esa comunidad en esta región y se sienten identificados con la minería. Entonces, digamos que hay un impacto cultural importante de Colmilla en la región a través de la historia.
He sees there's a cultural impact in the community as they're very proud of their work and they find it part of their identity.
Gracias al desarrollo de la minería se ha podido garantizar fuente de trabajo para todas las personas de esta comunidad. Se ha podido generar recursos por medio de las contraprestaciones por el trabajo de la minería, que en Colombia se llaman regalías. Esos recursos pues llegan nuevamente, parte de estos recursos a la comunidad y se invierten por los gobiernos locales en temas de salud, educación. Bueno, ya son inversiones que los gobiernos destinan sobre las necesidades prioritarias.
He reflects on the additional impact of in perhaps economic empowerment of the revenues that come from the operation, all the mining operations. A great amount of it goes back to the community in the form of education, and is at hands of the local governments to invest locally in their basic needs.
Actualmente Colmilla ha generado pues un impacto económico en la contratación de personal para trabajar en las minas. Contamos con aproximadamente 200 trabajadores en todas las minas, que todos son de la región.
The composition of the workforce is about 200 miners, and everyone is from the region.
Bueno, para nosotros, ¿qué es la minería responsable? Para nosotros la minería responsable es tener un sentido pues, de cuidado del medio ambiente, especialmente es satisfactorio para nosotros poder contarles, decirles que Colmilla se ha caracterizado desde sus inicios a través de estos años en realizar un proceso pues, ambientalmente responsable en el cual no se utiliza cianuro ni mercurio, prácticamente no se ha utilizado a través de toda la historia hasta el día de hoy. Eso es algo pues, que nos emociona contarlo en todos los espacios que tenemos la oportunidad.
So he's very excited to share his meaning of what his operation finds about being a responsible mining operation is that they've always cared for the environment and they've never had to use mercury or cyanide in processing their ore.
Tal vez al no utilizar proceso con cianuración se puede sacrificar un porcentaje, digamos, de la recuperación del oro, pero al poner en contra en la balanza, los mineros prefieren sacrificar tal vez algún porcentaje de recuperación del oro antes que utilizar el cianuro o el mercurio.
Says in spite of the additional revenue that could come from the use of cyanide, they all agree that in a balanced equation, the benefit on the environmental impact is greater than the revenues from that gold.
Para nosotros también, ¿qué es minería responsable? Es tener un sentido de conservación del medio ambiente. Nosotros hemos trabajado en un proyecto de reforestación con todos los mineros. Colmilla adquirió un terreno con recursos propios sobre el cual está haciendo una reforestación cercana a una fuente hídrica.
part of their efforts have been to conduct a plan of reforestation near a hydraulic plant.
Y esto se ha hecho gracias al esfuerzo de todos y cada uno de los asociados y pues, continúan capacitando. ¿Se fue? Ok. Eh, También hacer minería responsable para nosotros es trabajar de la mano con las entidades, con las organizaciones. Trabajamos en capacitación en socorredores mineros, coordinadores de salvamento, capacitaciones en primeros auxilios. Hemos trabajado con las entidades locales, con hospital, con defensa civil, con bomberos, con la Agencia Nacional de Minería para capacitar a nuestros mineros.
Part of his responsible mining initiative is to the training and advancement of the task of, for example, not just training, but also on the health side of things. So they work hand in hand with local hospitals and police so they can train their own miners on safety practices.
Hay muchas cosas por mejorar, como todas organizaciones, poco a poco, digamos, hemos vencido retos, muchas dificultades, pero gracias a nuestra labor hemos tenido el reconocimiento de organizaciones en Colombia, por ejemplo, el Ministerio de Minas y la Agencia Nacional de Minería nos ha reconocido como la primera organización cooperativa en Colombia con tener el mayor número de mineros capacitados en temas de seguridad y salud en las minas.
They're being recognized as one mining operation that has the most trained miners in terms of safety and advanced skills.
Responsable es vencer obstáculos y retos muy grandes que se nos presentan. Por ejemplo, nosotros nos vimos afectados porque la banca financiera bloqueó nuestros servicios bancarios, entonces eso fue, digamos, un reto muy grande de superar y fue tan grave que estuvimos pues sin canalizar los recursos de las exportaciones por aproximadamente un año y medio, entonces eso desestabilizó pues enormemente nuestra economía.
He's telling about one of the challenges in their efforts, and it happened just recently. For a little over a year, they had issues with converting the revenues from their bank into pesos due to paperwork. But he just wants to basically highlight that it's one of the challenges that they face in their efforts for responsible mining.
Bueno, para nosotros nuestros logros, retos y desafíos se han convertido siempre en procesos de exportación, tal vez con muchas limitantes, una comunidad, una organización de pequeña escala. Asumir un reto de exportación es un reto enorme que nosotros decidimos afrontarlo y hemos tenido la oportunidad pues de dar a conocer nuestro oro a diferentes clientes, diferentes lugares del mundo, como por ejemplo hemos exportado hacia Francia, Suiza y en algún par de ocasiones a Estados Unidos.
Another challenge that he's manifesting is having entering into the hard task of doing exportations for a small scale operation like his, but the product of that has given fruit in exposing the product to places like France and Switzerland.
Gracias a esto hemos dado a conocer a Colmilla, hemos dado a conocer el buen nombre de esa institución y digamos con este oro exportado, certificado, se ha logrado pues hacer piezas invaluables en eventos internacionales como el Premio Nobel de la Paz que se le otorgó a nuestro expresidente de Colombia, Juan Manuel Santos, a quien se le entregó ese reconocimiento con oro hecho de nuestra comunidad Colmilla.
Also, fruit of those efforts has been the recognition of Codmilla outside of Colombia, and additionally, their gold was used for the Nobel Peace Prize that was awarded to the previous president of Colombia. So that's something that they're really proud about.
Thanks. Para nosotros uno de los retos más importantes y más difíciles de superar ha sido el poder cumplir con la normatividad colombiana que es exigida a la minería en general. O sea, hasta el día de hoy pues las normas no distinguen a la pequeña minería de la gran minería en Colombia, aunque pues la normatividad está cambiando. Las entidades centralizadas nos están abriendo las puertas, han ido hasta nuestra región a visitarnos. El viceministro de Minas tuvo la oportunidad de ir en 2017, entonces hay un importante cambio, pero la normatividad es muy rigurosa, es muy exigente y es muy difícil de cumplir.
This is another very big challenge is to deal with the regulation of the local government, but slowly the doors have started to open for them, and in 2017 they were already visited by the Vice Minister of Mining to give additional recognition to their efforts and try to open those doors that of opportunity that they had been lacking for some time.
Entonces es un reto muy grande, son muchas entidades a las que nosotros debemos de cumplir para pues, lograr la conservación de que estos títulos operen continuamente y garantizar que esa comunidad trabaje por mucho tiempo pues, en la actividad minera. Organizaciones, entidades a las que hay que cumplir, como la Agencia Nacional de Minería, la Autoridad Ambiental, los gobiernos locales, los gobiernos encargados de las aduanas y la situación tributaria en Colombia. Entonces son un gran número de responsabilidades que demandan de profesionales, de contratación de profesionales y de recursos económicos que pues provienen de la actividad minera que se deben de sustentar. Entonces están esas responsabilidades, al igual que está garantizar la estabilidad económica de cada minero, de cada una de sus familias.
It's just additional information about the challenges. He feels responsible for the well-being of the community members, the miners. He expresses about his interaction with all of the government agencies, how challenging could that be, from tax agencies to export agencies to local government, environmental entities, and so on.
Bueno, también quisiera dar a conocer cuáles han sido por los beneficios de tener la certificación FERMAI y poder exportar bajo esta certificación. Los recursos que se han canalizado nos han permitido mejorar en aspectos técnicos productivos en los cuales se ha mejorado la eficiencia de los sistemas de transporte, de beneficio de las unidades productivas, tal como lo podemos ver en la imagen, donde antes habían unos sistemas muy primitivos de transporte de los minerales sobre los cuales se va a extraer el oro.
He wants to highlight the benefits of operating under a fair mine licensee, as a fair mine licensed operation, and some of the revenues he's highlighting. How you can improve infrastructure, and this is a before image of how things needed to be transported prior.
Sí. También se ha invertido en mejoramiento de equipos, herramientas que van a mejorar las condiciones de trabajo dentro de los túneles o frentes de trabajo de cada minero, como podemos ver en las imágenes. También se ha hecho la adquisición de unos equipos que permiten desarrollar pues, una minería segura, como son autorescatadores y equipos multidetectores de gases, que lo que nos permiten es medir continuamente la atmósfera de gases dentro de las minas para garantizar obviamente que los trabajadores operan bajo unas condiciones aptas de salud.
It has also allowed to improve significantly on equipment to work, not just to work, but also to keep levels of, to detect levels inside the operation at safety levels for the workers.
Y también hemos contribuido a un apoyo a la comunidad de escasos recursos, comunidad vulnerable dentro de la región, con alimentos, mercados, adecuaciones de viviendas, todo eso pues de una parte del recurso de premio Fermain que los mineros han donado a este tipo de comunidad de nuestra región. Entonces hay una labor de solidaridad también.
Also, beyond the work that's done in the mine, the revenues from the operations in the Fair Mine has allowed for the mining community to donate and provide additional food and safety to the community.
Se han hecho muchas mejoras en las instalaciones, en la planta de beneficio donde se procesan los minerales. Se han hecho adecuaciones eléctricas, mejoramiento de sanitarios, adecuaciones en la estructura, todo esto pues con recursos del premio Fermain. También se han hecho inversiones en señalización en cada frente de trabajo pues que es requerido por la norma. Entonces los mineros no han tenido que invertir recursos de su bolsillo para estas inversiones.
Additional improvements on sanitary infrastructure, and as you can see from the images, and this is achieved through the revenue as opposed to being part of the community's own pockets for improvement.
Bueno, también pues quiero darles un mensaje principal, es agradecimiento por el reconocimiento, ¿no? Un agradecimiento muy especial por este espacio, nos sentimos parte de esa comunidad. Yo llevo un mensaje para nuestra comunidad minera de que nos sentimos pues orgullosos de ser parte de esa comunidad ética, responsable, que cada vez va a tener un impacto positivo, y pues la invitación es a que como joyeros, como profesionales de este sector, incentivemos la promoción y el uso de oro responsable. Entonces cada vez esperamos que este movimiento crezca, y pues que con eso se va a contribuir a que nuestra comunidad pues tenga un sustento económico a través de los años como lo ha tenido, y que poco a poco vamos a seguir venciendo nuestros retos, las dificultades, y juntos con ustedes vamos a trabajar en un equipo, y ojalá que esta no sea la única oportunidad, que cada vez podamos compartir nuevos espacios, y pues que nos tengan en cuenta y que nos vean como un modelo y como una referencia para nosotros, pues es un motivo de orgullo.
He's very thankful. That's how we say thank you in Colombia. I'll just join him in the message. He's really thankful that he was able to provide additional information of his successful mission. He invites everyone here to get involved to promote the use of responsible gold, to continue this conversation so that there's more awareness of successful stories like his operation, and that behind the gold that you're seeing, there's these friendly faces that are ready to meet more than it's inside this group. So I share him on the thanks. Thank you very much.
He is here to continue that conversation of, how do we help? What's our part in the market? So we need to keep having that conversation and understand how we can support him. So please have separate conversations. I was going to ask him what the biggest challenge is getting to, say, a U.S. market. What is the biggest challenge of getting your gold all the way to our hands?
Bueno, pensaría pues que una de las principales dificultades es que los mineros de pequeña escala tienen pues muchos retos en el proceso de exportación, siempre las aprobaciones para conseguir que las exportaciones se lleven a cabo ante la aduana son muy difíciles, demanda de mucho esfuerzo, de muchos recursos, y muchas organizaciones mineras van a tener un gran obstáculo. Entonces nosotros que hemos tenido la oportunidad de fortalecernos poco a poco y más. Sin embargo, tenemos muchas barreras en ese sector. Y pienso que también pues la promoción, pienso que se debe de fortalecer la promoción en los diferentes mercados, y este evento pues es una posibilidad para promocionar el oro responsable. Entonces, ese tipo de iniciativas, que ustedes estén aquí, que su trabajo profesional y todo su esfuerzo pues esté empleado en el desarrollo de esas iniciativas, hace que poco a poco pues se fortalezca la posibilidad de ofrecer el oro en ese mercado.
So again, it's a real challenge to get. It's quite an expense to get the product on the export pipeline, but he knows that the solution, it's also associated with initiatives like what's going on here during conference about promoting the use of the material, and hopefully continue his so that his efforts are not in vain.
So next, we're going to shift continents a little bit to Africa, and I met Monica Gashui at the Kenya Gem in July. She was helping to organize and kind of provide a focus for that conference on responsible sourcing, which I found really interesting because Africa has this history of leapfrogging over entire sort of, I use landlines when there's cell phones. So why should artisanal mining, if we have this income source, why can't we go to a responsible focus right off the bat rather than have kind of a whole murky in between? So at the conference, there was quite a concentration of women representatives from their various mining organizations, and I'm talking from Cameroon, Zambia, Mozambique, Malawi. I found that incredibly impressive and very inspiring, and in Africa are organizing, and I think it's important for us to understand the full impact of that. And Monica's going to tell us a little bit about her background and the upcoming. You'll tell us.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Monica, for the introduction. So, as she has explained, I was going to come and ask us to think together, having listened to all the conversations from the designers and the jewelers about how everybody wants to get into responsible sourcing and access fair mined minerals, and just ask how do we get the artisanal miners to join this responsible sourcing conversation, to make it easier then for the jewelers and designers to be able to access these materials easier, right? And having listened to the conversations, for those who came for the breakout session we had on the Moyo Gems and the Everledger platform, I think a lot of this, we've sort of covered it. We reflected about it and asked, how do we link the artisanal miners into this responsible sourcing issue? And I'm glad because I then don't even have to define or start the, like going around who is an artisan miner. It's been covered for the last 2 days. A lot of videos have been shown about the artisan miner. Unfortunately, it's, they're working in these rough conditions, no equipment, no mechanization. Some have diseases, they are suffering, etc. It's the characteristic of the artisanal miner. You all know, you've seen the videos, so you know who they are. So I will not bother to define that or go through that whole grim stories again, because our panel is about hope and the way forward, right? And so for me, let me tell the story a bit of how I came to meet most of these responsible jewelers and designers. As Monica has said, I was seated in Kenya 3 years ago, and we were talking to these artisan miners. I've been interacting and working with artisans for the last 10 years or so. And most of the time, I don't like the attitude of there's so many issues. I always want to ask, what do we do? What can we do? And so I was speaking to artisan miners, and the usual problems and what you'll realize about artisans, be they from Colombia, Kenya, Brazil, or the characteristics of an artisanal miner and the struggles are all the same. They'll tell you about lack of geological data, we don't have equipment, we don't have capital, environmental degradation, the plight of the women, access to markets, challenge of understanding. You know, it's the same. If you closed your eyes and you wanted to solve the issues of one artisan in one continent, you can replicate it and solve the issues of an artisan in another continent, right? So I said to these women who I was interacting with, what do we do? And the easiest solution I found is when they said, we have no market. And I said, to create a market, we don't need money. Let's have a market. You have product, somebody wants your product, they want to know where you are, and they'll buy your product. So let's have a market. And to have a market, all we need is a venue and tables, and you bring your stones. And we'll go to the social media and tell everyone, hey, listen, we have all these beautiful gemstones that we want to sell. Please come. And when I was endeavoring to do that, I went onto social media and I found Christina, who's very active on social media. And Christina was talking about a Chicago...
She's everywhere.
Yeah, Chicago Responsible Jewelry Conference, and saying, oh, such a great place for responsible jewelers and designers to talk and source. And I'm like, wait a minute. I have tables with women with gemstones. You have jewelers and designers in Chicago who are talking about we want to be responsible and we want to tell the stories. So I told Christina, how about you bring them to Kenya and we have the stories, right?
That's where Susan Wheeler
Yeah, and
probably
Christina
comes
said,
in.
Christina told me, I'll do you even one bigger favor. I know the person who organizes this conference. So very quickly, she went online and said, Monica meet Susan. Susan, Chicago Jewelry Conference. Monica, Kenya Conference on gemstones. Meet. And I told Susan, this is wonderful. The people you're talking to are the people we need. The people they need are the people I have. How about we work together? And Susan said, great. And you all know Susan. When she says, great, let's move, we moved. And she told me, and he said, oh, we've been talking for so long. We've not met. You're like, we don't need to meet. We know what we need to do. We might be in two different continents. Let's go ahead. Let's do it. All right? And within, I think we met and started talking sometime in January or February, early this year. And by June, we had organized the conference. And Susan brought the Monica, Andrea, and Christina, and some of you to Nairobi. And we had a great event, and all I had to do is then bring the women from the different continents, different countries, and tell them, listen, I have all these people coming. How about you bring all your stones? And we have this excellent marketplace. Tell your stories. They want your stories. They're offering you good prices, and we're promoting responsible sourcing. So that, for me, that was a quick way to start creating solutions and bringing everybody to the conversations of how do we promote responsible sourcing. And I want to thank everybody that came to Nairobi for making that into a success. And when we started planning that, I got a lot of queries and requests from other countries where they said, some of them, the artisans could not travel to come to Nairobi for that. And they said, the cost of coming and exhibiting and everything was quite exorbitant. So what do we do? And I said again, let's look for another solution. Let's move the event. If you can't come to the event, let's bring the event closer to you. So next year, we want to take the same conversation, same crowd, same people, go meet the artisans, and we want to go to Zambia. Because from Livingstone, Zambia, I realized we can access 5 countries in Africa and tell them to come to one location and invite the other countries to also come. But what we want to do differently now, in creating the linkages, I've realized we are speaking in silos. So in this audience, we have international jewelers and designers who want to do responsible sourcing. In this panel, we have the miners being represented, the women miners, the cooperatives from Colombia, you know, being represented and airing their views and saying, you know, we want to be the market and we want to give you these products, we want to be responsible. But for it to also work and to be successful, I realized we also need the policy makers. Where are the African governments in this conversation? Once you come to Africa and you want to buy, you need to export these products. And you need to export it legally. You need documentation. If you're going to say it was fairly exported, it was fairly mined, and you want to trace it, you need proper documentation to support and back that up. And for that to happen, then, you need the policy environment to be right to facilitate responsible sourcing, right? So this time round, we want to invite the African governments to this conversation and tell them, we want you to understand what the market means when they say responsible sourcing. What is your role? Why is it important? Why are miners joining this conversation? Because they're benefiting from better prices. They're benefiting from this conversation. So facilitate for the miners and for the sustainability of this through policy. Put enabling policies to ensure that this is sustainable. So the Zambian event, which is going to happen in July next year in Livingstone, which
You
I
all
hope I
have
will
the
see
dates.
all of you there. We want everybody to come, and we have meaningful conversations so that we can all map what is everybody's role as a stakeholder in linking these conversations of responsible sourcing. So then we can make your work easier. Earlier in the lunch conversation that we had, the designers and jewelers said, we want to know our source. We want to know our producers. We want to tell their stories. We need provenance. We need a trust factor. And the only way we can start to create the trust is by putting everybody in the same platform, talk to each other, have meaningful conversations and dialogue, and know each other. Then we create sustainability. And that's what we want to do. So in the little that we can do, we create events and conferences for everybody to talk. And I hope then the same conversation will be continued with the Moyo Gems of what are the solutions and what are we trying to do towards linking all the players and stakeholders to these conversations of responsible sourcing.
If you can't guess the team of Susan Wheeler and Monica Kenya, as we call her, it was unstoppable. So Moyo Gems, full disclosure, if you were at the party last night, you understand that I'm actually one of the collaborating partners, along with Stuart Poole of 1948 and Everledger. But we have representatives from Tuoma themselves and from PACT, who are very important. We all kind of created this together. So I'm going to let Christina tell a little bit more about the history of Moyo and how it came about, and then we're going to hear from Mama Eunice herself.
Thank you, everyone. Okay. As you all year, Moyo began based on an inspirational group of women that we met through a collaboration with GIA, the Gemological Institute. And we met these ladies about 3 years ago. And they're all members of Tuoma, the Tanzanian Women Miners Association. And they're ever so lovely, ever so fierce, and people kept asking about them. And they kept people in the, like folks in this audience kept asking me the same question. They said, "These ladies seem awesome." They are. They own us, and if you ever meet them. They kept asking the same question. They said, "Christina, these ladies mine rubies and sapphires and tourmalines and garnets. Can we buy from them?" And at that point, the answer was no. And kept thinking about that. And others were thinking about that. And we all met here at the Chicago conference 3 years ago. And we went to the field after that because we knew together we could go farther. So we co-designed this program with the ladies. And we chose the word moyo because moyo means heart in Swahili. Moyo Nzuri means blessed heart or pure heart. Moyo also means heart in Shona, which is a Zimbabwean language, and also one of the languages in Malawi. So we often say that Moyo was born in Chicago and in Tanzania, but we have Pan-African dreams. Most people don't know that women are between 30 and 40% of all mine workers in the world. 30 to 40%, but we know very little about them. I know Impact spoke about the gem miner, or the gold miners yesterday. A project, we want you to meet the woman behind your stone and connect the woman at the beginning of the supply chain, the woman at the end of the supply chain, or men. I'll say that. With 160 miners, 3 main rules. They've all the GIA training, so they understand what they have, what's valuable, what's not. Taken occupational health and safety training, so that's in their village or near their village, in their language, and it's free to them. And they're all proving that they're working on a legal license. So whether it's a group license, individual license, or something we've kind of created, which is we call a bridge agreement. About that later if you'd like. And they've also all to the craft standard. Imagine we all agree what responsibility looks like. You know, the Fair Mind standard is a beautiful standard. It's hard to reach and it takes a little time. So craft is like a stepping stone. It follows the OECD's requirements, the Organization for Economic and Cooperation and Development standards. And then it requires progressive improvement. So it has this minimum, and then it requires, based on that mining unit's priorities, what do they want to prioritize next? So for the ladies, they've told us they want to prioritize the environment. We don't know what that looks like yet, but we'd like to think about that together with them after we've met craft. So we're giving ourselves about a year to meet craft. But in the meantime, they've met those 3 kind of ethical floor standards. I want to make clear that the reason that Moyo exists is collaboration of people. We don't work alone, we work together. So PACT, we're really good at working in the field. We work with Tawoma, and with Eunice and Selma and Catherine on all the field level issues. Norbert keeps us in the good graces of the government. And we work with local brokers and local exporters, all of which are licensed. We also work with Monica Stevenson, Megan Dahl, and Stuart Poole of Anza Gems in 1948, who have established relationships with various jewelers and designers around the world. And we also work with Everledger, who has been innovating on closing the technology gap on blockchain. So blockchain, we all hear about it. Some people don't know what it is. I won't get into it. But for a while, blockchain was only accessible to these big companies. Together, we're going farther. We're making it accessible to rural artisanal miners in semi-literate communities. Connecting the woman at the end of a supply chain to women at the beginning of a supply chain. So I want to kind of reemphasize that we all work in our little itty bitty space, but if you find the right partners, you can create anything. Mm-hmm. And when we launched Moyo earlier this year, we had 91 miners, and we thought there was a market. We keep hearing there's a market. People want to buy this, but we're not sure. Now we know there's a market, and now we're focusing on scaling up. So that's our focus this next year is scaling up based on your demand. And if you want to help us grow, you can donate through moyogems.com, or you can buy the stones or both. Mm-hmm. So thank you.
Thank you. So thank you. And a big shout out to Norbert, who is our boots on the ground, Norbert Massey. He works for PACT in Tanzania. They have about 200 people in their office there in Dar es Salaam, and he liaisons. We have ideas here. He has to translate them to Tawoma. So Eunice Negele is the chairperson of the Tanzanian Women's Miners Association. And she is also a feldspar miner herself. And maybe we should just hear from Eunice about what the impact is on the women miners in the communities themselves.
Wachimbaji wanawake katika nchi ya Tanzania wanapata manufaa kwa kupitia chama chetu cha Tawoma tukishirikiana na serikali. Na baada ya hapo tukapata shirika la PACT ambalo walituunganisha na GIA, na baada ya GIA na PACT kupata mafunzo ndio tukapata Christina ambaye alituletea wanunuzi.
Hello. women miners in Tanzania do benefit through TAWOMA, which is Tanzania Women Miners Association. And they connect the miners with the government, and they have been benefiting through this program when they met PACT through Christina, and then Christina connected them with other partners into this Moyo program.
So, okay.
Pakti wametusaidia kwa wanachama wetu kupata mafunzo mbalimbali ambayo ni utambuzi wa madini, ambayo pia kuchimba kwa kufata sheria, na pia usalama wa afya katika migodi.
So PACT has supported our miners training on identification of gem material, occupational health and safety, legal, in terms of formalization. So all these are benefits from PACT.
So how important is it to this project that the women are organized versus just kind of scattering? There was a reason why GIA picked, I think, this region and this population. Tuwoma has a very strong voice in the area, but how important is it that the women are organized? And would there have been a different outcome maybe if it hadn't been focused as much on Tuwoma and the women miners?
Pakti imesaidia sana kina mama kuwaweka pamoja na kusema kwamba TAWOMA tuliwaunganisha, tukawasaidia wakapata maeneo, lakini bado wangeweza kutawanyika na wasingekuwa na manufaa kama walio nayo sasa hivi, kwa sababu sasa wanafanya kazi kwa kufata sheria, wanafanya kazi kwa kushirikiana, na wanafanya kazi kwa manufaa tofauti na kabla ya kupata huu mradi.
Yes, so she's saying that this program has made our women come together, and this has been helping them to be formalized. It has been helping them to have more benefits, and this has been due to PACT. Before, when they were individuals, they couldn't have get all these benefits. So by them coming together, it has helped them a lot by gaining more markets and other benefits in terms of formalization and in terms of getting more markets.
It's not working? Oh, it's working for now. Yeah, I met the Tuwoma membership or Tuwoma leadership about 6 years ago when I first went to Tanzania. And I asked to meet with them after a session because I didn't hear from the ladies in the room. And so I asked for a special kind of focus group. And I said, look, there's a woman in charge of the mining program. And how can we serve you? And what do we need to know about the women in Tanzania in order to serve them well? And then they proceeded to ever so gently school me on gender, which it was, and I just remember thinking, wow, it was ever so gentle and so constructive and such a clear way forward. I can remember thinking, I want to work with them one day. So when GIA approached PAC to work in Tanzania, I knew who I wanted to work with. I wanted to work with TAWOMA because they were very clearly member-oriented. And so, we did this program, and they showed up, and they leaned in, and they took the training as a gift, and they they doubled to quintupled their incomes based on learning and again leaning in. And I think if we hadn't partnered with TAWOMA, we wouldn't have made that kind of impact, because oftentimes with different programs, you stay near the capital. You stay kind of within a couple-hour drive of the capital. Well, this is a 6-hour drive up to Tanga, and then 2 hours over to the villages. And these are folks who don't get training very often. So I think we were able to be introduced to a very special group who were linked by a very special organization. And then when the training was over, they said, you know, look, we still are hungry. We're still having the subsistence we sell when we're hungry. Can you link us to better markets? And again, I had been talking to the jewelry community, and we found the right partners. So Tuoma was essential to making this a success. And I continue to be just blown away by their commitment and knowing Salma and Eunice over the years. I love coming to Tanzania. They're a special group.
So, Mama Eunice, what challenges do you still face? And, you know, again, how can we kind of come up with any solutions that could come from this room or from future involvement?
Asante. Changamoto tulizo nazo sasa hivi ni vifaa vya kufanyia kazi, lakini pia bado akina mama hawajapata elimu ya kutosha. Tunahitaji mafunzo ili waweze kutambua na kujitambua zaidi. Na tunashukuru kwamba baada ya Moyo Gem watu wameweza kuuza na wakapata faida. Tofauti na pale mwanzo walikuwa nauza kwa mabroka, jiwe la dola 200 anauza kwa shilingi 20,000 ya Kitanzania.
Yeah, so the major challenge for women is having equipment. Is a major challenge for artisanal miners. Equipment for them to be able to mine. So currently they're using simple tools, which is making them hard to reach the quality materials. So if you can think the way that they can get equipment, that is one of the needs. But also on top of that, women need more training. They need to be trained more. It's good that Pact and Moyo has been there, which has helped them at least improve for them to get more prices when they sell. Because before, when a stone of $200, they were selling it at $20. So at least now they have more, they have improved prices, but still a lot of women have not been reached. So they need more women to be reached in order for them to be aware of the markets and the quality of the material they have.
Na kwa kuongeza ni kwamba nchi yetu ni kubwa na nchi yetu ina madini mengi na ni mazuri. Sasa tulikofikia kwenye ile eneo la mradi ni sehemu ndogo sana. Tunahitaji tupanue ili wanawake wengi waweze kufaika. Tunahitaji wanawake waweze kuchimba na kuuza kwa bei nzuri, maana kina mama ndio walezi wa familia.
So our country is big, and currently the coverage that we are at is very small, and we need to have more reach in the country so that women can mine and sell directly into the markets.
Na changamoto nyingine, pamoja na kusema tuna Moyo Gem, bado tunahitaji wanunuzi. Tunahitaji wanunuzi ambao watakuwa nanunua kila wakati na waje kwa wingi. Jamani, ni wakaribishe, maana Tanzania kuna amani na madini yapo tena mazuri.
Yeah, so she's saying that despite that we have more gems, but still we need more buyers. We need everyone to come every time. We have lots of stones, so we welcome you to come and buy directly to us.
So these pictures tell like a little bit of a story. This is the community organization, which is out in the villages. There's Katie Fackler, and not pictured is Rebecca Villalobos, who they did the hard work of actually making sure that everyone was legal. This is the occupational health and safety training. This is the opening of the market itself. This is us frantically, feverishly trying to buy as many of the women's gems as we can. Sweating, I'm not kidding. And here are gems, rough gems, and then some of the finished gems. But I think it's important to point out that I think you can try to help people mine better and safer, but it was providing this market, it was the economic incentive that kind of, they were willing learners and partners, but they also had to lean in because they want to do better, they want to sell more. Also, there's a small premium built into these gemstones. All of this organization, that costs money. That's boots on the ground. That's real people's salaries and money. And so, yes, there is a slight premium, but we've also decided that, much like the Fairmind initiative, that we will be giving a percentage back to the communities with the sale of the gemstones. But we also require some capital investment kind of upfront in order to help them with equipment, mining better, safer, raising these people up to a level where they can actually participate in the market. So, all right, so that brings me to the American, I'm here, and also, yeah, she's honorary Tanzanian at this point. So, Eric, when I looked at your slide and I saw 45 years ago, dude, like that's impressive. And Eric was talking about this far before anyone else was really talking about this. I think I had an early conversation with him where he actually used the phrase, "I'm not sure this is the sword I want to die on, but I guess I'm in it. Like this is it." So, and you know, if you read his resume, it's like, were you a founding member of AGTA? Yeah, founding member of AGTA, been in business 45 years. He's friends with and is colleagues with all of the, what we consider kind of the more traditional part of the industry. But yet, here he is trailblazing a completely different route. So, Eric, I think you need to tell us a little bit about your journey to responsible sourcing and your mine-to-market kind of capability, because you're pretty unique. Most gem dealers have no visibility to flips before the gemstone came into their hands. So tell us a little bit about that.
Is this one working? Yeah, I think this one's okay. Yes, I did start 45 years ago. And I can't imagine I'm still doing it that long. But when I graduated from college, I had a degree in jewelry fine arts and a degree in landscape architecture and environmental design. So they were very different. One was supposed to be my career, which was the environmental design. The other one was my hobby, and they sort of got flip-flopped along the way. And I guess, well, for the first 10 or 15 years, I spent half my time working with different mines around the world. So, and that would be here in the United States, but in Africa, Australia, India, from the bottom all the way to the top. So I spent a lot of time at these different locations. In 1980, we set up our first cutting operation. And so we're a little different in that our core is gemstone cutting. We do work directly with various mines, and I do own a couple, which is the stupidest thing I ever did, because I'm not a miner. I'm just not good at it. But basically, we're gemstone cutters and marketers, I guess. So we started cutting in 1980. In about 2000 or 2001, I was asked to do a World Bank project in Madagascar. And I think the title was Gemstones as a Method for Poverty Alleviation. I think it had this big, long title. And so I worked in Madagascar with some French people, and I don't speak French, so that was a challenge. And we were really charged to look at the industry very differently. We weren't there to look at how much money we could make. We were there to see how we could help some very low-income people benefit from these resources in their country. So it was after I came back from that project that we wrote our quality assurance and fair trade protocols, which was 19 years ago. And then I think that year I gave a presentation at Tucson And I still remember that. 3 people came, 2 got up in 10 minutes and walked out, and 1 listened to the presentation. So it was like you flew in from Mars. They thought, I mean, I would have all my friends come by and say, this is the stupidest thing we ever heard of. Why would anybody do this? You know, who cares where it's from, and why do you have to tell them, and why do you have to tell them if it's treated, and all this. So it was really, you didn't have much company at that point. So now I look at all these people and conferences, and every conference or every trade show has a discussion on this subject. So it is actually, I don't know, maybe that makes you feel a little better that you weren't quite as stupid as everybody told you. But we always wanted to tell the story about the gemstones. We thought that was a very important element of a gemstone itself. After Madagascar, we also wanted to tell the story of the people who produced it and the environments and that sort of thing. So our inventories are very different. Every single gem origin has its own inventory number. They're tracked from when we get them all the way through cutting, so we know what lot they came through cutting and back. We also, I mean, I'm glad we had Jagdish here talking about some of the issues from cutting. And we sort of access all of those areas, including heat treating, which is never talked about. And boy, that's really dangerous. The acids we have to use to clean stones are a mix of 50-50 hydrofluoric and hydrochloric. If you're exposed more than 2% of your body, you will die for sure. So, you know, there's a lot of things that go on in our industry that most people don't know about. Since we're sort of in the middle, we get to hear about and sort of deal with all of them. But our goal is to partner, and a number of the people you've talked to today and heard from are people that we partner with around the world, with our sort of protocols, and we've incorporated theirs and their goals to be able to bring the story of the gemstones, the people and the environment that produce them, to you, the retailers and designers, who then can carry it forward to the consumer. So that's really our goal. And it's not always easy. I know earlier I made a comment at one group. You sort of have to start somewhere. So when we talk to someone with a new mining operation, you know, yes, we have the standard form. Well, it's not very standard, but everybody has to fill out a form. If you go to the post office, you fill out a form. So, and it's asking them about certain things and the way they operate. But we have to very clearly tell them that this is not a pass-fail. No one fails. We just have to set a base point, and then can we improve it from there? If we see that they don't improve, that they're not trying and not going that direction, then we have to go find a different supplier. But since it is very new at a lot of these locations, you don't just walk in and find somebody that meets all of your goals to start. They're just not there. Partly because it's a different culture, it's a different way of thinking, certainly a different socioeconomic strata. So you really have to try and find a way to work at their level and explain then at you guys' level. So we're sort of the translator in between, which is a challenge sometimes. But our hope is that it allows all of us to look at the entire supply chains and find ways that we can all benefit and do better because of that. And in doing so, add a greater emotional value to our products to the end consumer. And if we can do that, they'll support it too, and they will support it. We've noticed numerous times at a higher price. And we do these funny little tests where we'll have a trade, well, actually, exactly where they came from. But we'll send them out and we'll say, this one, we know everything about it, and da-da-da-da-da. And we say, this one, you know, it's just 10% cheaper. We really don't know anything about it. And to date, we've never sold the cheaper stone.
So I think that idea and that theme of inclusiveness in the process, where all of our supply chain is at different levels and in different capabilities, different cultures. Some have been mining for thousands of years. Some have been mining for 40. So I think it's important that we have that spirit of inclusivity, not just for our supply chain, but also for any of you kind of starting out in your responsible journey. It's not necessary that you check every box right off the bat, but we're working on it. We're working towards that. I think we should open it up for some questions. I don't know how much time we have, but I think we have this opportunity to ask a few questions, and we should do that.
Just really quickly, Mama Eunice, can you tell me how many women are members of Tuoma?
Tuna wanachama 3,000 kwa nchi nzima.
Yeah, so we have about 3,000 members.
Na katika hao wanachimba madini tofauti. Kuna wanaochimba gemstones, kuna wanaochimba dhahabu na almasi, kuna wanaochimba tanzanite, na kuna wanaochimba ile industrial minerals.
Yeah, so they mine minerals, including gold, gemstones, industrial minerals. Yeah, so all of them.
I have a quick question for our Colombiano friend. Could you tell us the recovery of your gold using your traditional methods versus if you were using mercury or cyanide? What are you losing, more or less?
Bueno, nuestro método para la obtención del oro libre de cianuro y mercurio pues se basa en la utilización de la propiedad del oro, de la densidad. Entonces ellos utilizan en la planta de beneficio o en el molido que tritura la roca. Ya una vez se encuentra esa roca triturada como arena, se desliza sobre plataformas inclinadas con la acción del agua. Se van precipitando, se van separando los metales más pesados como el oro y el agua va arrastrando los minerales más livianos hacia al depósito. Y luego de ese proceso los mineros con una técnica manual, con la batea, con un método tradicional, ellos van poco a poco quitando las impurezas con una técnica que ellos han adquirido pues a través del tiempo. Entonces digamos que este método requiere de más tiempo, más dedicación de los mineros en comparación con un método de cianuración o de mercurio que prácticamente hace la separación pues, con uno o dos los procesos que se tenga que hacer y de manera rápida. Entonces ellos prefieren hacerlo de manera manual y repetir los procesos hasta que se va consiguiendo la separación.
It starts crusher machine. That right, and then using water on a sloped setup. As a technical that I can't. But it basically, when it's crushed down to almost like a sediment or sand-like structure, and then it's processed, and after that's sloped and with the help of water, then it's back to manual panning. So he highlights the idea that it is a much longer process and exhaustive, but that's been the of doing it. You can sometimes repeat the last process a few times. Exactly. He wants to add something.
Y igualmente estamos en un proceso de capacitación para conocer nuevas tecnologías limpias que sigan ese mismo lineamiento de un método limpio que no utilice esos químicos. Entonces, pues vamos a trabajar de la mano con las entidades nacionales, con centros de formación en Colombia para que nos puedan capacitar y para adquirir nuevos equipos, pero que hagan la manera ecológica.
¿La diferencia? ¿Puedes hablar de la diferencia?
15% aproximadamente.
¿Se pierde?
Puede ser un 15% aproximadamente.
So the question. Oh. Okay. Estás guardando las arenas en el mismo lugar.
Sí, pero las que contienen el oro las guardan cada minero y las vuelven a reprocesar, pero pues hay un porcentaje que sí queda.
Tailings. So yes, they're processed on site and then maintained on site, and sometimes they get reprocessed again. Yeah.
Hi. First, I just want to say thank you for everyone being here. I know in the past at other conferences, we always talked about having minor representation, and so it's so incredible to see a stage full of so many different minors. And my question was for Alexander. If I wanted to buy your gold right now, what does the process look like? How would I do that?
El primer paso sería pues hacer un acercamiento. Entonces dentro de ese acercamiento pues nos tendríamos que realizar la debida diligencia, pues que está dentro del proceso en el cual nuestra empresa va a pedir la documentación que su empresa tenga, o la empresa que está, si es directamente pues a la empresa, al joyero directamente, o si es por medio de una refinadora, la documentación de la refinadora para hacer el proceso de debida diligencia. Igual la empresa que va a comprar el oro va a solicitar la documentación de colmilla para verificar que todos los documentos están en regla, que se está cumpliendo con todas las condiciones legales y garantizar pues el origen del oro para evitar pues digamos un tipo de riesgo comercial. Entonces por norma en Colombia bueno, pues no, yo creo que no solamente en Colombia se hace así, ese es digamos ese protocolo. Luego de eso pues nosotros cuando hay la posibilidad invitamos a los joyeros o a las empresas que nos puedan visitar para que ellos evidencien directamente que las cosas que nosotros decimos y que estamos compartiendo con ustedes, esa es la realidad. Entonces, digamos, ese es un voto de confianza. Igual nosotros también pues tenemos la posibilidad de participar a estos eventos para dar a conocer nuestro oro. Y pues ya, digamos, sería un tema de costos de producción, de mirar qué cantidades se requieren. Por ejemplo, un reto y una dificultad es que los exportadores, en el caso de Colombia, nos cuesta lo mismo exportar, por ejemplo, 1 kilo de oro o 8 kilos de oro, porque los costos y la logística va a representar lo mismo. Entonces, es un reto exportar una cantidad considerable.
It's a question, but it's a thorough answer that deserves the addressing. So you can approach them commercially like you do any other vendor with the intent of buying, and paperwork needs to be in place for exportation, and he can also do business. Colmila can do business directly with a refiner. I should add, that's not part of this, but they already had commercial activity outside of Colombia, sold in France and in the US and in Switzerland. So the system is in place. US refinerías en Estados Unidos, ¿ya tienes algún contacto? So there's already historically one export already with Hoover and Strong. So that's one refinery in the US that he's referring to. And he's also addressing too, also in terms of pricing structure. You know, that's something that's in dialogue as well. And depending on the demand, the frequency, and based on their capacity for production. So just an added data to your question about that's just how, but what happens next too.
Vale. También aprovechar este pequeño espacio para agradecer al señor Toby Pomeroy, quien fue la primera persona que compró oro de colmilla a finales del año 2003. Entonces también él tiene esa experiencia y también pueden consultar cómo fue la experiencia a él.
So you can from his Code Media Co-op in the US. So ask him
All right.
how it happened. So.
And Eric, I had a question I wanted to ask you. Well, first of all, set the record straight. There were 8 of us in that room in Tucson for your audience. 6 trade members and 2 dealers. It was the dealers that got up and walked out. The trade press stayed and listened. But my question is, first of all, you know, I do appreciate that you're taking ownership for the responsibility for the representations you make about your product. But I'm wondering, given your experience in the industry, do you really think an industry built around emotional connections and a symbol of love is going to really be able to move forward based on third-party certifications in place of product knowledge?
That's going to be a real challenge. One of our biggest challenges right now is how do I say this politically? Politically correct. Working with, we have to partner with these people to help give them product knowledge. They may bring computer knowledge, they may bring some of these other areas, but too often we see the way it's applied, it's actually giving the wrong impression or giving the wrong information. So somehow we have to find a way to take what some of us old guys know and help mentor some of these newer people coming in the industry, but coming in from a very different perspective. And that's not an easy challenge, but
We could go all Chatham on you if you want.
we see in many cases a severe lack of knowledge of how this industry runs and the actual products themselves. And just an example, you were all talking about this wonderful things and miners and stuff. The last time I was in Africa working with ruby, in the area I was in, I never saw one ruby that was not lead glass filled. And most people don't know that. I mean, you're at the mines and they say, how is it possible? I go, well, can't tell you how it's possible. I can tell you absolutely that's the case. I can tell you 20 to 30% of all the quartzes in the world in the market are fake. And people are not asking those questions. They just haven't been exposed to that level of the industry. So that's going to be one of the challenges. It is also, for all of you, when people ask you why a gem brought to the market this way costs more, maybe it's a little bit more expensive to produce, but it also eliminates that 20% of the fakes that are in there, and that is what really elevates the price. So you're actually getting what you think you're paying for then. So it is a challenge, but it is a challenge that I believe my end of the industry, which is somewhat different than you, because yes, I do work with a lot of those majors and stuff, that we all need to embrace, because the consumer's asking different questions now than they did before, and they're going to ask them in a different way. So we need to find a way to take what we've done in the past and in effect translate that into a new narrative for the younger consumers.
Hi, I got the microphone. I have a question for Monica and Eunice. Same token as in the back about gold being available. Do you think there would be a possibility for you to bring the gems from Africa yourselves and sell them at Tucson or one of the other shows from you, the miners? It would be so powerful to see. I mean, I know, Monica, you're not a miner, but it would be amazing. Just a thought.
Um, it's on. It's possible and it's done. If you go to Tucson, you'll find some of the miners from Africa actually displaying their gemstones. The only problem is because of the costs of coming from Africa to Tucson, and you'll appreciate at least around 60% of gemstones mined are done by artisans, and you've seen the plight of the artisan miner. It's already been highlighted to you. So at the back of your head, you know who that artisan miner is, right? So for them to get into into a plane and come to Tucson, they would not be able to afford it. Remember what we've been saying? For them, it's buy now. What you want to do with those blue little stones is none of their concern. They need to feed their families, right? That's where they are at. But it's done, and I think that's where the problem, and I had one of the designers saying, what comes to Tucson, you cannot tell where it has come from. It's from everywhere, right? Because then people who are able to come to Tucson, from Africa, will go gather and buy from various different mining sites out in the villages, right? And bring it all in bulk so that they can be able to repay back the cost of their ticket and the expenses of coming to sell for you in Tucson. So if you're okay buying from Tucson, from that kind of setup, you will find it in Tucson. But if you really want to know who has mined it, where it's come from, you want to see that miner, then that's what we are doing and asking you, come to source and come buy from the women themselves or the people mining them. So I think it's really a question of the design and the jewel and where you want to buy them. But yes, the miners, some of them are in Tucson. Yeah.
Kwa sasa hatujajiandaa na tutauliza wenzetu waweze kutusaidia kimawazo, lakini pia changamoto ni gharama. Madini yapo, lakini changamoto pia ni gharama na uzoefu. Kwa hivyo tutaomba kama tutaweza kusaidiwa kimawazo, tunaweza tukaleta, maana madini tunayo.
Yeah, so Eunice is saying that for now we have not done it and we don't know how to do it, but we'll ask our colleagues how it is done. But the major challenge is the costs maybe of doing the business or bringing them there. But we'll work with them to see if that is possible.
If anyone has powerful friends who would like to fund Tuoma to come to Tucson, we'd have to go through the correct export process, of course. No one should get arrested. So we could probably bring the stones through Monica and Stuart and then have the Tuoma ladies there at Tucson. But we need friends in high places. So if you want to make that happen, let's talk afterwards.
Hi. I have a question about sustainability at scale. My name is Wing. I'm from the jewelry brand Wake. The demand for sustainably made jewelry is definitely there, especially among millennials. They have a growing purchasing power today and really, really care about transparency. But from my experience, it has, as a designer, and I've had the lovely opportunity to work with several of you on the stage. From my experience, the demand is bigger than the supply. For example, like the mines that we've worked with might not be able to supply the materials that we design around in a certain concept. Sorry, I'm having trouble articulating it, but the mines may not be able to regularly supply the materials that we promise our customers in full collections. It works in one-of-a-kind materials, but for deep impact and long-term impact, which is what I'm looking to do with our brand, the supply isn't consistent enough for the demand that we want to supply and give offer participation to our customers for. So it's possible, having learned what I learned, to design around these challenges and design collections at the scale at which I've learned is possible, and I've learned to ask those questions. But since you're all here on the stage, I'd like to ask you what considerations you'd like us to, as designers, to make that will work with the supply and like your long-term goals over time. How do you see us helping you grow with our designs? How can we design around your own visions rather than designing around the challenges that we face when it comes to supply after it's already reached the market and run out? Ha ha ha.
Let me answer that from the perspective of having worked with artisan miners across the continent, right? And they think they have said that, and Mama Eunice has said it again, and we have highlighted the plight of the artisan miner. So one of the challenges that they talked about is access to great, because the design jewelers are saying, we are here, we're your market, we are willing to buy. So you're addressing one of their challenges, which is access to market. But supply must meet demand, as you've rightfully stated. So the supply has come closer to the source. And so they have to, in selling, they have to go to the mine and produce more so that when you come back, they still have the kind of qualities and the grades of gemstones that you're looking for. But as you've had most of them articulating, one of their main challenges is lack of equipment, all right? So the rate at which they will produce, when they didn't have market, they had stockpiled over a long period of time, and that's why they were saying we need to sell. Now that they are selling, now that there's, the buyer has come, they need to get back what they have, surprises they have, produce more so that they are able to sustainably continue selling to you. So 2 issues. Some of the miners, and most of them tend to be semi-literate or illiterate, and at times they do not see the business they are doing as a business. So they will sell the stone and don't reinvest back in the mine. They'll go pay school fees, buy food, do something else, then complain and say we are still struggling with the mines with lack of equipment, right? So that there's an issue of education and awareness creation. Tell them, as you get better prices that you're selling, part of the proceeds, reinvest back to sort some of your challenges of we need to produce. Go and buy some of that equipment, all right, so that you can continue to produce. And then there's the issue of really lack of production because they don't have the equipment. By the nature of what they do, if you go to a bank, they'll tell you we don't touch them. High risk, we don't understand how to give them loans with a resource that is under the ground. If they don't pay back my loan, how will I touch that mineral which is under the ground? So they don't have access to financing. So when they say they need equipment, for me in terms of sustainability, I'm looking at lasting partnerships. Does it mean then that if you like what that woman is producing and you think her mine could be viable, could you think of partnering and tell them, let's get into a joint venture agreement possibly, where from what I'm buying from you, let's invest in equipment, so that we're producing more. I am assured of the source of the mineral, and we can do a revenue share arrangement. Then now, the issue of sustainability, you have a producing mine where the material is assured, and the miner starts to benefit from that kind of conversation. That's a sustainability issue.
And those relationships do exist, but I do think that it's important to say that it does require investing in some infrastructure in order to have some of the supply. So I believe okay, we're supposed to wrap it up. Can Eric?
Okay, I'll just make a quick comment for Wing. The best thing that I can suggest is, particularly if you're talking to people that have some sort of direct supply chain, if you're talking bluestones, say, look, I'm thinking if you guys can say, we're going to need 10 of them now, but in a year from now, our goal is to raise this to 100. And there are certain gemstone types that people will say, even with the right equipment, whatever, we're not going to get to 100, don't use this stone. So it's a dialogue that it's not easy, but it's a dialogue that you want to have with the supplier, who hopefully knows what they're talking about, as to what the potential is on those gemstone types. I mean, we're doing this with one company now, and it's been real tough, but I think we're shipping them 7,000 sapphires a month now. So it's possible. It's not easy, and it took a lot of back and forth to try and build up this capacity together. But it is doable, but what we need and these people need from your end is what your goals are. If your goals are you're going to be doing one of a kinds, that's fine. You know, that becomes a lot easier. But if you say we're putting it in a production line and our goal is to sell to these 5 companies, and we think if we get that we may need X amount of supply, that will automatically eliminate certain varieties of stones and certain sizes, and then you try and narrow it down to ones you can get on, that you at least hope you can get on a regular basis.
So the conversations kind of yesterday and today have really centered around a lot of the accessibility of materials that are not causing environmental damage, that are not causing humans harm. So having access directly to some of these suppliers is going to be critical, I think, moving forward. And the more we know about a materials journey and the support that we give to those who are doing the right thing, you know, the better decisions we make. So thank you very much, everyone.
I think we're
done. On behalf of the women in Kenya and the Tawoma women, allow us to sincerely thank Susan and each of you who's contributed to the equipment drive for the safety gear. We appreciate. It's going to really change the lives of the women working in the mine without that safety gear. So allow us to convey sincere gratitude on behalf of the women who are going to receive that equipment. Thank you.